How to Humanities 2, Shasta College. How was your weekend? Looks like winter might be here, or it's around the corner. It's getting cold and wet. We need the wet, of course. Fires are out. The air is clear. It's not a bad thing. Hope you guys did something interesting over the weekend and were safe and weren't fools. It's pretty easy to be a fool. It's harder to stay above all that. What I'm going to cover tonight, a bunch of little things. Hope you're paying attention to these lectures. If not, good luck. Where are we? Well, if you saw my announcement, I want you guys to read that chapter. I think it was 36, and it kind of puts us into the modern world, the 20th century. Gives you a little background on that will help you kind of put some of this stuff I'm throwing at you right now in context. We're staying in the 20th century, probably to the end of the class. We may tap into the 21st century if we have time. So where are we? What are we doing? All this ground we're covering, and sometimes we cover multiple artists from multiple eras. And so the last week it was painters, and so essay 7, which I'm going to assign today, is going to be about painters. Do a 3 to 5 page critical research paper on one of the following painters: Jackson Pollock, Frida Kahlo, Jean-Michel Basquiat. Put all that on the assignments. You'll see it. Each of these painters changed our culture. Each of them died young. 2 of them by essentially suicide. Whether it was passive or alcohol fueled or heroin fueled, they were troubled artists indeed. Anyway, I'll post that in assignments. It'll be due, what is today? Tuesday. It'll be due next Tuesday, I guess. Maybe Wednesday. Depends on how generous I feel. You guys got plenty of time to do these papers. I give everybody a week to do a paper. That's a lot. And I'm getting a lot of people handing in late assignments. It's okay. You're going to lose points on that because life gets in the way, family gets in the way, jobs get in the way. I get it. But some of you aren't handing in papers at all. I don't know if you've dropped the class. I hope you have, because you're not going to do well. Although I think it's a little late to drop the class. But there's a bunch of people out there who didn't do this last assignment. Don't know why. I'm not getting any emails from anybody why, or even if they're still in the class. So because each paper's worth 10 points, you could go from a B to a C pretty quick. You could go, it just takes one paper not being handed in. You could go from a C to a D, D to an F really easy. I'm adding essays to the syllabus, so don't worry about that. I haven't changed the numbers yet in the syllabus. I will do that this week. We'll probably do one more essay, probably do 8 essays all in all. And then you're going to do a quiz later on, which will be worth more points than 10. I'll announce that later. It won't be till for another couple weeks. Don't worry about it. And then you're going to do a final research paper. And I'm going to let you choose the topic of anything we've covered. I don't want you to write the same paper you've already written. Okay. I'll double check on you if you are. I will, if you can't find a topic you want to write about, anything we've covered, anything, any lecture, anybody you didn't write about already, I will also make a list of people you can write about. And that'll be, once again, a critical analytical research paper. And it's worth a little few more points than the regular essays because it's important, and that you'll have to have a works cited page, etc. Talk about that later. That'll be won't be due till the last week of school. So, but that's coming up. We're going to hit vacation here in about 2 weeks for Thanksgiving, and then we're on the downhill from there to the end of the class. And then you'll do your journal. Hope you're keeping up on those. Enter weekly journals, what I'm lecturing about, what you're seeing in the videos, what you're writing about, what you're reading about, add it all in there and give a little bit of a personal insight. It's called a reflection journal. If I don't see any reflection, you will lose points. If it's just telling me what we did, not good enough. I want your personal take on it. That's lets me know you paid attention. It lets me know a lot. It lets me know how to better teach this class next time also. So be free to express yourself, okay? That won't be due to the last week of school. So you won't see any assignments because there's no due date. I'm not opening it up right now. It's too early. Okay. Um, this week we're gonna do music as deep as we can, probably spill into next week. And then we're going to do cinema, a deep dive on cinema. And the quiz will be based on the cinema section. I'm not sure what we'll finish out with. I'm working on it. Might be a combination of several things. This week it's music. And I know we've covered classical music somewhat. We're leaving out a lot. But this is going to be 20th century music. And today we're starting with American music that was essentially is considered completely American, the blues, and another American form of music, jazz. Now, you might think to yourself, oh, I know what the blues is. Some old boring guys on a porch picking and singing about the troubles they've seen. Well, it's way deeper than that. Where did it come from? Well, a lot of times, probably post most likely came from slavery. Um, when people were in the fields working for free, uh, held against their will, they would sing spirituals, they would sing call and response, made up songs to get through the day. The blues made them feel better. Don't ever think the blues is just sad music. Yeah, the lyrics are real about relationships, mostly gone bad. Because who wants to hear a song about a good relationship? Who wants to see a movie about a good relationship? We need conflict. We need conflict in our art, in our literature, in our painting. We need conflict in our music, human contact, conflict. And the blues has plenty of that. In the early 19th century, we still had Jim Crow in this country. That is a form of institutionalized racism. Um, Jim Crow is a terminology actually came from live minstrel shows. He was a character in minstrel shows, early vaudeville, and there was actually a time in this country and many states, mostly in the South, where you could legally hang an African American man for simply looking at a white woman, let alone speaking to them. They could be hung for it, folks. This was right up until Jim Crow was in effect in certain states up until the 1970s. Nobody was getting hung then, but this racism was still built in. This is going to make you sing the blues, let me tell you, because you're going to feel the blues. And there was roadhouses all throughout the country, a lot in the South. And African Americans could have a place to go, to let off steam, to have some fun, to maybe dance, to drink um, some illegal booze, because during the 1920s, there's prohibition. People still were having an awful lot of fun, folks. They called it the Roaring Twenties for a reason. It was roaring. We came out of World War One. The world said we would never have another war again. It was the war to end all wars. Boy, were we wrong on that one. The warfare in World War One was our first mechanized war, meaning we had tanks and planes and machine guns, and the slaughter was off the hook. Slaughter on a grand scale, nothing compared to dropping a couple atom bombs in Japan or fire bombs and napalm in Vietnam. Oh, we've improved our killing power. Yes, indeed. But before that, we had people needed to let off steam. They're not getting paid many wages. Slavery's over, but still, they're not getting paid much. Living conditions are pretty grim. And so you wanted to go down to the local roadhouse, honky tonk bar, and there was some music there. And so blues became ways to express the times and the culture. White people embraced it also, but it's also a way that musicians of the day can make a living by playing the blues. If you would hang on 1 second, I have to let my cat out. He's looking at me with that weird look. Come on, you, let's go. Well, I don't want to put up with this. Come on. Going? Come on, sweetheart. Go on. I'm back. The cat is happy once again because I'm its slave. Speaking of slavery, I'm slave to my cats. Um, it's not a great analogy. Sorry about that. It's best I could do. Anyway, so this form of music became a way that musicians can make some money playing live music, dancing in these honky tonks and roadhouses that were out hundreds of these places throughout the country, mostly in the South, United States. And the blues was born. There was different forms of blues. The Southern rural blues, acoustic bass blues is different than the Chicago electric blues, say of Muddy King, Howlin' Wolf. The blues, the early blues of Robert Johnson is a lot different. No electric instruments. People are still trying to figure out how Robert Johnson did what he did. Robert Johnson was a mediocre musician at one time, and then he disappeared. He came back a year later, and he could play guitar like no one had ever heard before. He was singing the blues like no one had ever experienced. And the rumor was he went down to the crossroads, if you know the legend of the crossroads, and he met the devil, and he made a bargain with the devil. If the devil would give him this incredible talent to be singing the blues, the only thing Robert Johnson had to do was sign his soul over to the devil when it was his time to die. And of course, he did. Bands throughout the whole history, rock and roll, have been singing about that very pact with the devil. And it's soaked in blues, the blues myth. And a lot of his songs were made famous later by groups like the Cream and Rolling Stones and Eric Clapton. Very, very much influenced by Robert Johnson. Um, so this medium was not just a African American passion. White people were flocking to these honky tonks on the other side of the tracks because that was funner. It's where the fun was. It was where the authentic human expression was, not in the uptight white owned clubs in the North. And because there was no slavery in the North States, the blues took on a different take. It took on a more immediacy, a more electric industrial type of sound because of the cities are industrial. It's not a great place for acoustic. There's no backyard porches sitting in a swampy area. It's high industry. And so the music reflected that. And then we had musicians possibly, hopefully you've heard of, like BB King and Howlin' Wolf and Muddy Waters. And they were singing to a white audience. They were singing the blues because everybody understands the blues. You don't have to be African American to understand it. If you've ever not gotten what you need, if you've ever not gotten the person you love to love you back, you know the blues. There's an immediacy to it that speaks to the simple, basic human need of acceptance. I'm going to sign a documentary um, to watch, Birth of the Blues. Please watch it. It'll be on. I'll sign it, put it on. The usual places on Canvas. Jazz was a form of music based on a lot of things, really. But the early jazz, early 20th century, were coming out of places like New Orleans, Chicago, New York, of course. And there was West Coast jazz too. But the basis of it was coming out of the South again, like so much of our American music does. I hope one day you guys get to travel somewhat after this pandemic has cooled its jets a bit and you could get about out and about. And I hope you guys do some traveling to the South. Go to New Orleans. You will feel the blues. You will feel it. You will soak it up. It's in the atmosphere. So is jazz, big time. There's a certain pace to life in these areas that birth this sort of music. In jazz, because we're coming out of World War I again, people wanted to have a good time. And it was upbeat and danceable, instrumental music for the most part. There was singers, of course, but mostly it was brass players like Louis Armstrong and um, later on Miles Davis, John Coltrane, Charlie Parker, Chet Baker, Dave Brubeck. That was in the 40s and 50s, 60s. But it was for the most part instrumental music, and for the most part improvised, free improvised. Jazz musicians are usually masters of their instruments. Usually, basic instruments would be in a jazz quartet. Let's say would be a piano, upright bass, drums, trumpet, saxophone, trombone, clarinet, Guitar, especially later on when the electric guitar came out, absolutely. Guitars early on weren't had to be amplified through a microphone, and it was hard for them to be heard over brass and drums. It wasn't until the amplifier was developed by Les Paul. Yes, there was a guy named Les Paul, folks, that people could plug in their guitar and be heard over those other instruments. But anyway, this is all early stages and the early pioneers of early jazz. If you ever got the chance to see the great Ken Burns documentary, Jazz, it's wonderful. It tells the whole history of it from start to finish. I can't go into it all. We're just doing a survey thumbnail sketch of the era, but I'll be talking about it for the next couple days. We're not dealing with rock and roll yet. That came out about in the mid 50s, but it was starting to percolate in the blues and in jazz. It's coming. See you next time.